This video will demonstrate how to construct a coil pot using extruded coils. So in a previous video, I demonstrated how to roll out our first coil, how to get our base of our coil pot prepared, and how to add a reinforcement coil. So if you have not yet gotten as far as this, please go back and watch Coil Pot Construction Part 1. That will help you get ready for this video. Another video that you should watch before you watch this one is how to use the extruder. So I did a video on how to use the extruder, which is what we use to make coils in the classroom. So I've already extruded some coils, and before I begin, I want to talk to you about how to store your coils after they've been extruded. Because there are so many of us, and we don't want to waste the clay, you're going to be sharing your coils with the people you sit with. So I would recommend taking turns, going to the extruder, extruding coils, and then bringing the coils back to your table. And all I've done is, just while I'm working in class, now I'm not going to store these like this overnight, but just while I'm working in class, I've taken my garbage bag and I've laid it down flat on my table. Okay, and I have my coils here. So when I take this off, you can see. So I have my coils handy. They're right next to me, so I can grab one as I need it. And then I've also taken some damp paper towel, and I've placed it on top of my coils. These are going to dry out very quickly if we don't keep them covered. So the damp paper towel will just help them to stay plastic. Okay? And then when you're not using them, don't leave your bag open. If you at least just wrap your bag around the coils like this, it will help to prevent them from drying out too much. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to use the coils to build up on your coil pot. Okay, so I'm going to take out a coil. Now for my template, if I hold this back up for you to see, for my template, my coil pot is going to start building outward, and then it's going to start coming back in at the top. So not everyone's is going to bow outward. Some of yours might start by going inward. Okay, so I'm going to at least start with one of my smaller coils, because the wider areas on my coil pot, that means that I'm going to need a longer coil. So I'm going to save some of my longer coils that I have for that, and I'm going to choose one of my shorter coils here. Let me just close up my bag. Okay, so placing the coil on your coil pot is going to be important. Let me see if I can get this a little bit closer so you can see better. Okay. All right, so anytime we're going to attach a coil or figure out the size of our coil, pretty much anytime we're working on our coil pot, we want to have our template handy, and we want to always make sure we're using our template. Now, if your next coil goes out a little bit, you're actually going to be placing the coil slightly on the outside of the coil below it. As your coil pot goes inward, you would be placing the coil slightly on the inside of the coil below. And if you're trying to build straight up, so if I were trying to build this into a cylinder, I would stack those coils right on top of each other. Okay, so it's really important that you're looking at your template and figuring out where your coil needs to go. So I'm going to just start by just carefully, I know this one has to go out a little bit, so I'm just going to carefully get my coil just to stick onto the one below it, and then I'm going to adjust it in a minute. And a reminder that when we're overlapping the coils, so where it's overlapping itself, like this is going to happen here. For this coil, we don't want it to go outward. It's going to be directly parallel or right on top, stacked right on top of the one below it, because the coil below is the one we're actually going to be attaching. So once I have that stuck on there fairly well, I'm going to start using my template, and I'm going to crouch down a little bit so that I can actually look at it head on. And I want to push my coil until it's touching the template. I don't want to cut into it. I just want it to be touching the template here, okay? And again, my template is straight, flat on my banding wheel. Then I'm just going to scoot this over a little bit, and I'd say like every ½ inch or so, I'm going to turn my banding wheel and I'm going to adjust my coil. Sometimes I might need to push it in a little bit. Sometimes I might need to push it out a little bit. But whichever way it needs to go, I want to make sure it's right up to my template. Okay. So I'm feeling pretty good about this coil. For this one, now when I showed you the base, I told you not to cut on your coil pot and to remove it. I think I'm gonna still do that, but you could potentially cut the coil right here. I just worry that if I cut too far, or if you cut too far, you're gonna create a crack. So I'm just gonna take this off over to the side maybe. And I'll cut through my coil over here. And again, remember we're cutting through that where the coils are overlapping, and then at an angle, slice all the way down through, and then pull the knife out towards you. And then I'm going to place this back on top. Now once my coil pot starts getting a little bit bigger, I probably will just start cutting my coils right on there, but I just wanted to do a review and tell you to make sure that if you are cutting your coils while it's on the coil pot, to be careful not to cut too far. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to then go back in with your template. So I'm gonna go back in with my template. I just wanna make sure I cut that right. What's gonna happen is if you're not checking your template and your project is getting like thrown off symmetry, the only way to fix it would be to start cutting coils off. And that's a lot of work that you're putting in, putting these coils down. So again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get your coils lined up as accurately as you can to begin with. All right, so I've gone all the way around. That looks great to me. I'm gonna go ahead and start slipping and scoring this coil on. And remember to make sure that you score where the coil joins to itself. So I'm going to score here. And then I'll also score the coil below and the bottom of this coil. So I'm going to do this bottom first. And then you want to think about also where this coil is going to be joining the one below it. So my coils are starting to go outward a little bit, so I have to keep that in mind as I'm scoring my coil. Make sure you're scoring it pretty well. We are going to be blending these in. So you won't see it too much. Sorry, got distracted. One other thing before I make this attachment, I talked to you about in part 1 video where my seam joined together, so where my coil joined together to create a seam. That's going to be the weakest part of my project, so I don't want the seam on my second coil to be where the first one was. So I can kind of tell that my seam was right here. I have a little divot that was created, so I'm going to avoid this spot right there when I put my coil on, okay? Add my slip. Okay, so while the slip is still fairly wet, I'm going to go back in with my template, And again, remember, don't pinch your seams. I'm just kind of pressing them together so that they'll stay. And then I'm gonna go back in with my template and readjust. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. I do want to take care of my seam here where my coil joined together. You can use your fingers, you can use a modeling tool, but we do want to compress that seam. We don't want to pinch it though, so we're just going to kind of blend it so that it blends in and so that we know that it's going to stay together. One other thing that I wanted to mention, as you're using your template, you're gonna maybe make some like little marks going around your coils. Okay, so I don't know if you can see, but I'm getting like a few little marks going along here. That's okay, we're gonna be smoothing these out more later. So it's okay if we see a few of those marks from your template. We'll be blending after every couple of coils. So I think I'm gonna add one more coil on the same way that I did before. And then once I get this third coil on, I'll show you how to blend them. Okay, at this point, I'm gonna let my slip dry just a little bit. It's pretty wet right now, and if I were to try to blend while the slip is pretty wet, my coil's gonna move around. So I'm gonna let this slip dry for a little bit, and I wanna just give you a couple of pointers as you're going forward. So something that I meant to mention earlier, if, let's say, your coil pot, you're building it, everything's looking really good. It's all your coils are lining up to the template, and then all of a sudden something happened and it's no longer lining up. If that happens, more likely than not, the last coil that you put on is wrong. Maybe your template was at an angle, maybe you forgot to use your template, but I would recommend that if all of a sudden it's no longer symmetrical and your template's not lining up, just remove the last coil that you put on and then look at your template again. Most likely it was the last coil that was added. It would be a quick fix just to take it off and add another one. Okay. All right, so as I was talking to you, my slip is starting to dry a little bit more. It's still pretty wet, but I think at this point I'm safe to start blending. Now, blending is really important for this project because right now we're just joining these coils with like a small join. So like there's just a small amount of surface area that's joining together as we're stacking our coils on top of each other. So we want to make sure that our coils are going to stay put. So we're going to be blending our coil pots. So I would blend after every 2 or 3. I wouldn't wait till the very end to blend. If you wait till the very end, it'll be hard to get your hand down inside of the coil pot, and also it will be harder to use your template accurately. Okay, so to blend, you're going to use one of your modeling tools, and I like this curved modeling tool for most things that I do in class, especially for the coil pot because it is it is circular. We do want to make sure that our tools are nice and clean though. And then just like when I was blending my reinforcement coil in the last video, I always want to make sure that I'm supporting the walls of my project on the outside while I'm blending the inside. And then if I were working on the outside, I would support the walls from the inside. So I'm gonna start on the inside so that you can see. And when I do this, I'm gonna be basically pulling the clay down into like the coils below it. And I'm just gonna keep pulling until it looks pretty smooth. I'm gonna go back in with my rubber kidney after this. So we're just trying to get the clay to kind of meld together. One other thing while I'm thinking of this, you want to make sure that you're blending these coils while the clay is still fairly plastic. So if I attach coils during a class period, I need to make sure that I'm allowing myself time for the blending also. If not, if I were to try to come back to this next class, the clay is going to have stiffened up and it's going to be more difficult to blend it. I also want to make sure that I'm cleaning my tools off as I go. So having some paper towel handy is nice to just clean your tools off as you go. And again, super important that you make sure that you cup the outside of your wall while you're doing this, or you're going to distort your coil pot and it's going to throw it off template. One other thing, you can also pull upwards, so depending on your project, like mine's easier to pull downward, but for some of you, in some areas, you may want to go upward. I like to maybe, if I'm able to, try to go both ways, so I'm just going to go back over what I've already done upward, just to make sure it's nice and smooth. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. I'm gonna hold it up so you can see. So it's not completely smooth yet, but we're getting closer. So now I'm just gonna go in with my rubber kidney and I'm just gonna compress those coils, smooth it in a little bit more, and then make sure that I'm also, cupping the outside of this. I'm not pressing really hard when I'm doing this, just kind of a light, gentle press, just to make sure everything's gonna stay together. But I wanna be very careful that I'm not distorting the shape or the form that I've created so far. And then as a last measure, I'm just gonna go in with my hands. I'm just gonna put a little bit of water on my hands. So remember to try to prevent your hands from drying out. You can spray a little bit of water on them. They should not be dripping. So remember, we're just rubbing it in like it were lotion. And then I'm just gonna go in with my fingers. Sometimes you can get things with your fingers better than you can with any tool. You can feel it. You can tell if there's lumps anywhere, any parts that need to be blended a little bit more. And again, it is important to do this while you're still able to get your hand down in there. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. I'm noticing my seam here is kind of, let's see, starting to open up there. So I'm going to take care of that since I noticed it. All right, so after I've blended my inside coils, I'm just going to double check that I didn't mess anything up when I did that, and I'm going to line my template back up. It's a good idea to also make sure you clean your template off occasionally. So I'm just going to go back in and readjust if I have to, if I threw anything off with my scraping. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. The next thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna blend the outside of this. When you're blending the bottom especially, the bottom is gonna be the hardest part to blend. I'm actually gonna bring my coil pot, I'm gonna do it on the front so you can see. So I'm gonna take my coil pot off of the edge of the banding wheel just a little bit. If you can see. All right, well, it's off the edge just a little bit here, okay? I'm gonna do that close to me so that when I'm pulling my tool down, so as I'm blending, I can pull this down and away from me and I'm not getting stuck on the banding wheel. I'm also gonna scoot this towards the end of the table so that I can pull my tool down more. It's gonna just be a little bit easier for me. So again, I'm bringing my banding wheel to the end of the table so that the table and the banding wheel aren't gonna be in my way. I'm not letting this hang over a lot, just a little bit. I don't wanna accidentally knock this off, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of bend down a little bit so that I can see this head on. And I'm going to blend the same way, so I'm just pulling down with my modeling tool. And I'm gonna support the inside of this as I do this. And again, you can scrape down, you can scrape up, you can do like a combination. It's gonna look kind of messy at first, so let me just show you what mine looks like to get it started. Okay, so it's gonna be kind of messy, but I'm gonna blend that out a little bit more as I go on. Okay, so at this point, I've gone around and I've blended all of my coils in so you can't see them anymore, okay? But it still looks kind of rough. So I'm not done yet. I'm gonna go back in with my template. Okay, and then you wanna do this, like if your clay is super, super soft at this point, you might wanna let it dry a little bit before you do this. But I'm gonna go back in with my template. And as I was blending, I probably threw off my form a little bit. So you're gonna have to readjust. And again, making sure you're going every, I'd say about ½ inch. I'm just pressing on the inside a little bit gently to press that wall out so that it's touching my template. I'm gonna do this all the way around. And then once I'm pretty certain that it's symmetrical, it's fitting my template, I'm gonna use my template as a scraper. And this will only work if you've used the template correctly to begin with. So again, I'm gonna make sure that my template is flat on the banding wheel when I do this. And like we did at the beginning when we scraped, I'm just gonna gently turn my banding wheel and scrape with my template. And I'm looking at like where my template is hitting my project. I'm gonna occasionally also clean off my template, but I wanna make sure that As I'm scraping, the template is in line, and if I need to gently press on the inside, I can. Now you want to be careful. You don't want to scrape off too much. You just want to get it so that it has a nice surface and that it's in line with your template. At the very end of this project, I'm going to show you how to finish these off and excuse me, how to make them look really as smooth as we can get them. We're going to be filling in, you're going to have what are called divots. So if you could think about, like, if you've ever played golf or seen golf, a divot in golf is when the golfer swings the club and some of the grass kind of comes up with the tee, and it leaves like an indentation in the grass. So you're going to have like little divots or indentions in your clay. Don't worry too much about those yet, because I'll show you how to fill those in at the end of the project. So again, I'm just going to keep scraping until my coil pot is back in line with my template and it has a nice smooth surface. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with the way this looks. I want you to see a little bit closer. So you can see some of my scrape marks, and I am getting a few little divots, and those are created because of my template. But again, like I said, we're going to be smoothing these out a little bit more later, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Right now I'm really happy because my coil pot is in line with my template. So I'm just going to hold it up so you can see a little bit better. All right, so hopefully you can see here that I'm in line with my template. That's what we're looking for. Now I want to tell you one more thing at this point. After every third or fourth coil, after it's been blended, okay, there are going to be a couple blow dryers set up on the counter in the classroom. I'm gonna go get one and bring it over here so that I can show you this. But after every third or fourth coil, we're gonna blow dry just like the top part. So as these get bigger, we're only gonna blow dry the 3 or 4 coils that we just attached. The reason for this is because our clay is really plastic, as we build upward, if the clay on the bottom is too soft, it won't be able to hold the weight of the coils that we're building up. So we want to get the bottom part more of like a soft leather hard, almost to a leather hard, before we start building up our next 3 to 4 coils, because then that way it can support the weight of the clay as we build it up. We don't, however, want the bottom to get really, really, really dry. So that's why once I add 4 more coils, when I go back in with the blow dryer, I'm only going to blow dry like that section. I won't go back and do the bottom again. Okay, so I'm going to pause here for a minute and get my blow dryer, and then I'll come back and show you. Okay, so I'm back and I have just a standard blow dryer. A couple things about the blow dryer, and there's different ones. They don't all look like this one, but we do want to make sure that we're using it on low, and that we're also have our banding wheel with us. So if I were going to use the one blow dryers that are set up in the classroom, I would just bring my banding wheel over to the counter so that I can spin this as I'm drying it. So I'm not gonna dry it a lot. I'm gonna stay about at least 6 inches away. I don't wanna get up right onto the coil pot. I wanna stand back a little bit, and I'm only gonna do this for like 30 seconds, no longer than a minute. So I'm gonna go ahead and just go ahead and do it. So I'm just slowly turning the wheel and kind of keeping the hair dryer stationary. I also want to try feeling the clay to make sure that it's getting to the temperature I want. And important to keep moving the clay. I'm turning the hairdryer, bringing it a little bit lower so I can get more of my base on the outside. All right, so this feels good to me. It's no longer real squishy. It's definitely more firm. It's gonna hold the weight of my coils as I go upward. As I continue my coil pot, I'm probably just gonna build it and you can watch, and I'll speed up the video. I may stop occasionally if I think of something to tell you, but I'm just going to continue the same process that I did before. I'm going to put on 2 or 3 coils, then I'm going to blend, then I'll blow dry, and all the time I'm making sure to use my template. Once I get mine built, I'll probably come back in another video. So there'll be a part 3 that'll show you how to finish everything, how to take care of those divots that have been created when we built these, and how to make sure everything's smoothed out nicely. right, so at this point, my video is getting really long. I'm not quite halfway done, but I'm almost halfway done with mine. So I'm gonna stop here and I'm gonna finish the rest of mine off camera. And I'm gonna come back for a part 3. Once mine is built almost all the way to the top. There's a couple things that I wanna show you when I get to the top, some options that I'm gonna give you. And I'll also show you how to clean these up, and if you have any of those divots that we talked about or that I talked about earlier, I'll show you how to fill those in, okay? One other thing, as mine starts to build upward, it's gonna start to go in at this point, okay? So when I'm stacking my coils as it starts to go in, the edge of the coil might be placed slightly on the inside of the coil below it, inside, inside, inside. I'm still using my template. I still want to make sure everything's lined up with my template and that my template is laying flat. At the end of each class, so your goal is to attempt to attach at least 4 coils per class period. I've been blending after every 2, and that seems like a good point. So I would blend after 2, blow dry, add 2 more, blend, blow dry. And then at the end of class, it's a good idea to blow dry 1 more time just to make sure that it's nice and sturdy. And then you're just gonna take a piece of damp paper towel. Make sure again that it's not soaking wet. So you're squeezing like all the water out of that paper towel. Because if we put too much water on these, we want them stiff. We don't want them soggy, and they'll come back soggy. So I have my damp paper towel here. I'm just gonna like lightly take this and wrap it along the top, just like this. This is just gonna help my project stay at this temperature. I'll then put my project in my bag. I just have a Menards bag here instead of my garbage bag, but as long as it's in a bag, sealed up, okay? And then I would put this in my cabinet, and then extra coils, okay? We can keep those and save them for next class. What we would need to do is we would need to make sure that we put some damp paper towel over them. So show you, I have a mess here. Let me move some of this out of the way and I'll clean up when I'm done here. All right, so again, here's my bag that I've been storing my coils in. And right now they're not actually in the bag, they're just kind of wrapped around the bag. So I would probably take some time to get these in my bag. If I have any like small ones that no one's using anymore, these can be broken up and put into the reclaim bucket. So I might fish out some bad ones or some broken ones that I can't use anymore. Those can be reclaimed and we'll use them again for something else. And then my coils that I have left, I'm just gonna carefully put inside my bag or inside one of your bags at your table. If you need an extra bag, I have extra bags, just come see me. So I'm gonna place that in there, and then again, I'm gonna take some damp paper towel. We really don't want these to dry out. If they dry out before next class or when you come back to them, if they're too dry, you can scrap them. You'll just have to extrude more. So, and it's kind of a lot of work going back and extruding all of your coils. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I've got my paper towel and I'm just going to just kind of wrap it around, lay it on top, drape it over my coils. And then I'm going to want to make sure my bag's sealed up really nicely. And for this, you can just get all the air out. Get all the air out of the bag. Kind of wrap the bag around the coils is what I would do. Seeing that on the camera. I'm just kind of wrapping the bag around. And then I'm going to twist it so no air can escape, no air can get in. Kind of tuck it under. And then I would just carefully take this to my cabinet and leave it in my cabinet on my shelf. Okay, so again, stay tuned. I'll come back for a part 3 to show you how to finish these.